It's a very easy friendship to have.
The Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, has implored all parliamentarians to think about budget repair as a moral challenge. He's made the case for spending cuts during a speech to rev up government MPs on the eve of Parliament's reopening. The economic plan, though, is currently being overshadowed by the debate on a same-sex marriage plebiscite. In a moment, the Leader of the House, Christopher Pyne, will join us, but first here's political correspondent Sabra.
A little chilly.
All right, I might start.
The 45th Parliament is finally whirring into action after the longest election campaign in history.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Already we're into it. Whoa, isn't it good to be back? You know, what an exciting Parliament we're going to have.
Well, that's one word for it. As new Senator Darren Hinch would say, expect the unexpected, like random pedestrians strolling through the middle of a doorstop interview.
Rather than spending
And just like these interlopers, the same-sex marriage debate has smashed a path through the government's intended first-week parliamentary wish list.
I do believe in a plebiscite before a vote by the parliamentarians.
Before Parliament's even met, Senate crossbenchers are preempting the debate, declaring their hands. Pauline Hanson wants the people to have their say, but Darren Hinch says Parliament should decide.
If it's knocked back this time, like the Republic, it'll be 25 years before gay people are allowed to marry, and that is a disgrace.
Good morning. I have one thing to say. We are going to have a plebiscite, we are going to win the plebiscite, and it's going to be an enormously proud day for our country.
Tim Wilson, who ditched his job as Human Rights Commissioner to run for the House of Representatives, made a grand entrance to Parliament.
Labor and the Greens are going to be left on the ash heap of history because they were not prepared to stand up and support this important reform. Thank you.
The reality is I've been in a long-term committed same-sex relationship and it means a lot to me. But I'm not doing this because of the effect on me. I'm doing it because this is about the type of country we should want to be, where everybody enjoys mutual respect. And I think it would make a big difference to bringing the country together and moving forward, because this issue has distracted the country for too long away from things that affect everybody, like budget repair.
We believe this is an issue.
Today, the Xenophon team formally announced it would not support the plebiscite, citing the suggested cost and fears it might unleash an ugly campaign against the same-sex community.
That is an issue. It's all part of the decision-making process. I think these are all factors that you take into account. It is hard to quantify, but it is a factor.
Overwhelmingly, people have said to me, Rebecca, I can think of 160 other ways to spend $160 million. And what we do know here is it is just an opinion poll, and we've already had a number of members on the government side who said that if it did get through, they still wouldn't vote for it. So what is the point?
For the legislation to pass the Senate, the government needs 39 votes. The coalition has 30 and had secured 7 more with the One Nation bloc, as well as Senators Day, Lionhelm and Lambie. There are 13 votes against the plebiscite, with the Xenophon team joining the Greens and Darren Hinch declaring they won't support it. The power to pass or block now rests with Labor.
One of the biggest issues which we'll be dealing with in the coming weeks will be the future of marriage equality in this country. The quickest and most effective way to deal with marriage equality is to have a vote in the Parliament.
Labor says it won't make a final decision until the government presents a bill to Parliament. Newly re-elected Labor Senator Louise Pratt, the co-convener of Rainbow Labor, is campaigning for her party to vote down the plebiscite.
Look, it's really fair for lesbian and gay Australians to say we don't want this plebiscite. The agenda for the plebiscite has come from those who are opposed to marriage equality. My inbox this week in terms of emails calling for a plebiscite, all of those emails fundamentally come from people opposed to marriage equality.
Labor maintains the Prime Minister should just allow a free vote in Parliament, even though the coalition took the plebiscite to the election. Mr Turnbull's hands are tied. When he took over the Liberal leadership, he honoured the policy that was decided under Tony Abbott after a marathon 6-hour party room meeting. In the Coalition Party room today, the Prime Minister was praised by young Conservative Andrew Hastie for sticking to it, a policy he knows is against Mr Turnbull's personal view. Bill Shorten says he fears Mr Turnbull will stuff up the plebiscite, yet Labor is playing a risky game. Should it sink the policy, the government will blame the ALP.
I'm a little perplexed why Bill Shorten, who keeps saying the reason we should deal with it is because the people support it, thinks that if we put it to a vote to the Australian people, he suddenly thinks that they're going to become hate-filled bigots. He really ought to think about his position a little more carefully and show a bit more respect to the Australian people.
Ireland became the first country in the world to pass marriage equality by a public vote. And I think one of the key things that we did to make that happen was we brought people together, that it was about persuading people rather than trying to defeat our opponents.
Tiernan Brady played a key role in winning support for Ireland's historic referendum last year. He's now here advising the marriage equality movement.
It is very clear that no one party in Parliament is able to deliver marriage equality by themselves, whether that's by a plebiscite or by a vote in Parliament. They will have to work with others to achieve that, and that's essential at this moment because, as you rightly say, what we could end up with is a plebiscite bill that can't pass one house and a marriage bill that can't pass the other house. And I think the one thing that is clear is when we have a majority in Parliament, lesbian and gay people shouldn't have to wait any longer for marriage equality. They shouldn't be a victim of party politics.
The government is determined to show it's focused on other issues like the economy and budget repair. The Coalition Joint Party Room met this afternoon to discuss the strategy for the 26 bills that will be introduced later this week to enact tax cuts for companies and individuals and slice $6.5 billion in government spending. The Prime Minister's couching this as fundamental business for the new Parliament, imploring every MP to think about it in moral terms.
It's more than economics. It's more than fiscal matters. It's not just a technical issue. This is a fundamental moral challenge. How long are we prepared as a nation, as a generation, to load more and more debt onto the shoulders of our children and grandchildren? How long are we prepared to live beyond our means, to live effectively on the credit card of the generations that come after us?
A message of fiscal obligation for crossbenchers and no doubt government MPs, delivered before both leaders tonight paid their respects to those who'd made the ultimate sacrifice.